Hello. Been a minute since I did a video recording, um, so wanted to talk a little bit about some of my posts. I think the one that I'll spend time on today is hyperactivism, cause hopping, urgency, and the undercurrent of perfectionism. This I feel like is kind of at the heart of what I've been thinking about, writing about, and attempting to write a book about, and sort of in a really amazing, ironic way. Um, Feels like a lot of things have come full circle. 5 years ago, just a little over 5 years ago, I quit my full time job right as COVID was starting, and I attempted to start a business. Well, I did start a business called Proactivism, and at the time, it was meant to be a business to help activists, specifically white activists, deal with burnout. Because I was feeling it, I was seeing it, and again, just the timing was incredible because I started this business right right at in May 2020 when George Floyd was murdered, um, and which set off I think a lot of what um, I've been feeling and seeing what I'm writing about here. So to come full circle is to to then notice and identify and name something called hyperactivism, which I'll talk a little bit about here in a second. And going down that path, not intentionally to say to come back to proactivism, because I kind of gave up on proactivism after I started the business. I didn't make any money. It was a great experience, but I didn't make any money. I had to get a full time job again, and just kind of forgot about it. Um, but now here I am, um, seeing these two kind of opposing or conflicting approaches, if you will, to activism. And here I am attempting to name it, um, and guide myself and hopefully other people to a more sustainable approach to activism. So, hyperactivism. Um, I've never been diagnosed with ADHD, but I have a feeling that I have it. Kind of read about in my Substack article about how when I was a kid I couldn't stay still, constantly moving. My parents share this story all the time. I'd be at the dinner table and I'd be like moving in my chair, getting up, flipping around in my chair. If something came up in conversation and something like that was like in my room, I like had to go get it. Super impulsive. Um, so so it made me think about like hyperactivity. And again, if you haven't seen the video, I'm looking back and forth at my phone because I have the article here to kind of reference, and then going back to the video here. Um, so hyperactivity, right? So I looked up what are the symptoms of hyperactivity. Of course, there's physical hyperactivity, difficulty staying seated for long periods of time, constant movement, restlessness, engaging in multiple physical activities without finishing one, guilty in many, many, many different ways, talking excessively and interrupting conversations, impulsively grabbing or touching objects. So that's the physical hyperactivity. Then there's cognitive and emotional hyperactivity, racing thoughts, jumping from one idea to another quickly. I mean, as I'm going on this list, like, yep, 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 yep. Struggling to focus on one task for an extended period. Frequently starting new projects before completing previous ones. Yep. Difficulty relaxing or feeling the need to always be productive. True. Impulsivity in decision making without considering consequences. Yep. Intense emotions such as quick frustration, excitement, or anxiety. Yes. Then there's social and work related hyperactivity. So interrupting conversations, blurting out responses. Definitely true for me, maybe not as much as the other things. Difficulty waiting in line or for turns in discussions. That's definitely true. Overcommitting to projects or responsibilities due to enthusiasm. Yep. Constantly seeking new stimulation, whether through social interactions or tasks. Struggling with repetitive or monotonous tasks, leading to avoidance. So, check, 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 all the way down the board. Um, I've always been in like sort of like I describe myself as like I leap before I look. Um, get a lot of energy at the front end of something. That energy wanes over time. Yeah, it just described me so well. And then add to that that I have mild OCD, which kind of can exacerbate the symptoms and making me even more obsessive compulsive with my thinking and my movements. So back to activism, back to my observations of myself and other people. I'm seeing how this hyperactivity is now probably has been. It's probably not a new thing, but how it shows up in activism. So let's kind of compare and contrast what I shared before, and then um, add it to put in the layer or the context or lens of activism. So cause hopping, short attention span for issues. This is physical hyperactivity. Rapidly shifting focus from one cause to another without deep, sustained engagement. Feeling an urgent need to address every issue rather than committing to long term strategy. Struggling to stick with long term organizing efforts when immediate results aren't visible. So, again, as I go through this, just reflect uh, on does this resonate with you? Might not. Does resonate with me? And then overcommitment, burnout cycles, similar to um, sort of like work related hyperactivity. Saying yes to every protest, meeting, initiative, often without the personal capacity to sustain it. Feeling restless or guilty when not actively participating in activism, especially if you're seeing other people do it, kind of that FOMO. Experiencing burnout but struggling to step back, fearing disengagement equals complicity. So we're burned out, especially for us as white, we feel really guilty about what it might look like if we take a break, if we rest, if we step back for a little bit. Um, I know for me, I thought other people don't have that privilege. So I just got to keep going. I got to push through it. And then we fear what could be why aren't you out there? Why aren't you out protesting? Why aren't you doing more? So we just sort of push on and push through when we're burned out. High stimulation activism. So preferring activism that feels urgent, intense, or emotionally charged over slower strategic efforts. So again, hyperactivity is about being a preference for the new and the urgent and the more stimulating things. If we're involved in longer term, it's a little bit more boring, monotonous, and we're not really getting that excitement. Engaging primarily in crisis response activism rather than long structural change are kind of similar. Putting out fires, right? Um, and again, don't get me wrong. There's a need for these things, and um, there is a place for it. I think what my overall um, point is that it can sort of take over as the dominant approach to activism. Struggling with behind the scenes or administrative activism that doesn't offer immediate emotional reward, sort of that, and this is sort of maybe like people who do the behind the scenes stuff isn't as rewarded. It's not as sexy. It's not as flashy. So fewer people do that work, even though it's critically important. Then there's impulsivity and reactive engagement, jumping into discussion, debates, or social media activism without fully processing information. Guilty. So guilty. Making quick, emotionally driven decisions that may lack long term strategy. Again, it's that leaping before you look. Engaging in call out culture without considering the impact of words or actions. So that impulse, that desire to just jump on somebody or something because of the urgency of it, rather than thinking through how do I say this? How might this impact this person? Or seeing the big picture. And then perfectionism and fear of stagnation, feeling an obsessive need to always be doing something rather than resting or reflecting. I think we know this. It's kind of all over the place. Trisha Hersey's Rest is Resistance. but we know this in the sense of capitalism too, that resting doesn't feel productive. Viewing mistakes and activism as failures that require completely starting over rather than learning experiences. This is something that I struggle with quite a bit. I go off on something new, I experience a setback, I see it as a failure, and it's sort of, what's the point of continuing? It feels like a failure now. And then avoiding deep, slow, or less visible work because it doesn't provide immediate validation. I sort of cover that. So it's just it's just fascinating to see the connection between hyperactivity and activism, and again, is this, it's not a bad thing in and of itself. It's when it becomes the dominant form of activism that I believe hinders deep, impactful change. So, hyperactivism, I define it as a pattern of activism driven by urgency, overcommitment, and a need for constant engagement, often at the expense of strategy, sustainability, and personal well being. It prioritizes high intensity action, such as rapid response efforts, cause hopping, and public displays of commitment over slow structural change, leading to cycles of burnout, disillusionment, and reactive decision making. And I think now more than ever today, and this ties to another post I did, I think, can't remember if it was a Substack or LinkedIn or both, but I asked ChatGPT to come up with a list of 100 humanitarian issues just in the United States, and it easily came up with it. I think it probably could come up with hundreds more. So this cause hopping, as it ties to hyperactivity, is being overwhelmed by the number of issues in the world and feeling hyper responsible, which is another form of OCD, specifically moral OCD, and can be tied to race OCD, this hyper responsibility, this obsessive compulsive need to address all the issues because you feel responsible for it. Um, so cause hopping is jumping from one cause and movement to the next, and often that can it can just be dizzying for the person doing it, and it also can be um, unhelpful for the movements because you're jumping in and out of movements, um, coming in and then going out, coming in, going out, coming in, going out. Um, which, of course, as an individual, you're not really making much of progress or impact in those areas. And then for those movements, it can be very disruptive for someone to come in and then leave because you have to like get the person up to speed and onboard them, and there's changes in social dynamics in the group, and then they're gone, and that can leave a lasting effect. So, what proactivism is, um, first and foremost, it's learning how to regulate our nervous systems, and we know that as well in the context of just how we show up around marginalized folks and how when we're unregulated and not grounded, that can be um, that can definitely have an effect. Focus on sustained efforts, what that looks like for us. Be intentional and strategic in our actions. Become clear about what our roles are, what roles we play in social change, and then feeling connected to part of a collective effort, our ancestors, now, and future generations. That one I'm still learning more about. Um, I need to dive into, but that's knowing that it's not just us. We feel this urgency, or this over responsibility because we think it's just us, and not only is it so many other people right now, but it's also people before us and people who come after us. So proactivism. I'll close with this. So I forgot I have a call at 2:30. Um, it's a strategic, sustainable approach to activism that prioritizes long-term impact over immediate emotional gratification. It emphasizes deep engagement with issues, steady participation, and resilience over burnout cycles. So I'll leave it with that. Something to sit with, see if it resonates with you. Be curious. Always please reach out if this resonates with you. I'd love to connect and chat. Um, until next time, which Knowing me, who knows what it'll be, but appreciate you all watching and listening, and be well.